What's going on, YouTube world? This is your guy, Sealz, the man, and I'm so glad to be back as always. In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 things that I want to specifically point out that men struggle with in relationships. All for y'all to understand us a little better. And if you didn't know, and if you don't know, this YouTube channel was created to put my 2 younger nieces on game so that when they become of age, they will know and understand us a little more so they don't fall into the traps and situations and situationships and the things that we all went through growing up, right? But we didn't have that person to put us on game. I'm their big uncle, so I'm trying to do that for them. So this is more of an investment, a seed for them. But in that process, you know, a lot of people, including y'all, thank you so much, felt me as well and learned from, you know, the things and my perspective. So I'm eternally grateful for y'all for even listening to me and you know, putting things that I say into consideration. So I just want to shout y'all out. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get to it. The first thing I want to point out that men struggle with in relationships is separating old mindsets and predetermined thinking from the reality. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of us men were raised in certain households, or we were surrounded by certain types of men. We've watched certain shows, and we were just surrounded by a lot of factors that included old thinking, old ways of thinking, specifically when it comes to women and how to treat women and how to be with women, how to communicate with women, right? For example, growing up, a lot of dudes tell me, yo, man, the number one thing you need to do is get money, get bread. And when you get money, all the ladies will come to you because that's all they want from you anyway. And because, you know, I didn't know no better, I used to think that like, oh, is that true? That's true. It must be true. Okay. And that used to be my goal, to get more money so I can get women. Or I remember I used to hear, yo, if you ever mess up with your lady, get her flowers and or get her what she wants and everything will be okay. Everything will disappear. I remember I used to hear, you know, never tell a woman how you truly feel. I used to hear so many things to the point where you start to believe those things because you're surrounded by these influences. So I know if I was surrounded by these things, then a lot of these young men out here are surrounded by the same. And that is why you see a lot of the men these days the way they are, because they never grew up, or they never had a mentor or someone who's truly looking out for them to tell them like, yo, that is not real. This is reality. Those things, that's old mindsets, that's ignorant mindsets. A lot of these dudes didn't have that, especially as a male figure role model. So when a lot of these women get into relationships with these guys, they don't even understand what they're stepping into. They're stepping into a relationship with a dude who doesn't have a proper understanding of how to treat a woman, on how to be with a woman. So a lot of these men don't learn about how to properly treat women until they're in relationships with women. A lot of these men don't learn on how to properly treat women and be with women until they lose all the good women in their lives. And that is the unfortunate part of a lot of men's relationships and understanding of women. They don't get it until it's too late. But because they believe those things, those influences that they grew up on, that they were surrounded by, because they took that to heart, they made that law, they made those things fact, they were already at a disadvantage, and therefore their relationships were disadvantaged, and the women they were with were damaged. You feel me? So a lot of men struggle with this thing, separating old mindsets from mature reality, and there has to be growth in between those two things. You can't just go from that point to that point. There must be experience, there must be education, there must be role models, mentors, there must be truth in between, so that this man can get to the point of maturity and true reality on how to treat their woman. All right, so the next thing that number 2, that men struggle with in their relationships is being in tune with both halves of their biology. Because we all know this, right? We were created from man and woman, not man and man and not woman and woman. So all of us have estrogen and testosterone, the chromosomes and all that. We all have a mixture of both, but a lot of men are only or mostly in tune with their male side of the equation. And that's why you'll see a lot of these men not give the decent amount of respect to women, because they are only in tune with that side of the equation. And I always ponder this, always ask the young men that I tutored and mentored, that the way you talk to your girlfriends or the girls you're dating, would you talk that same way to your mom? Would you talk that same way to your sister? Would you talk that same way to your daughter or your nieces? No? Okay. Oh, okay. So why? What's the difference, right? Because if you were truly in tune with the other side of you that made you, the female side, then you would have respect for that side just as much as you have respect for the other side. When you are not in tune with both sides, you do not have a full grasp and appreciation for both sides. And that is why you see so much disrespect towards women. That is why disrespect towards women is so mainstream now. And it seems like it always has been. And media and social media makes it cool to be disrespectful to women. That is the way of our society these days. But that is a problem, a serious issue. It affects everything and everyone. You have to be in tune with both sides of what makes you. And the next thing, the third thing that men struggle with in relationships, kind of piggybacking off of my previous point, is logic versus feelings. Separating logic versus feelings. And this one affected me personally. I went through this personally because I'm pretty logical now, but back then I was very logical. 1 + 1 = 2, and that is it. There is no other answer. I don't want to hear nothing else. A, B, C. There's no other variation. That is it, straight to the point. And that transferred to my relationships and how I handled issues in my relationships. I would not put into consideration her feelings when it came to issues in the relationships because I was so logical, almost like a robot. If it didn't make sense to me, if it didn't make logical sense to me, I would just end the argument. I would argue to try to debate and show her why she's wrong. But I didn't put into consideration her feelings. And as I matured and experienced through relationships and in relationships, I understood that, men and women are totally different for a reason, a divine reason. Imagine if women were all like men. And imagine if men were all like women. We were created uniquely different for a reason, to balance each other. So now, the Sealz the man you see now, I understand that you have to put in consideration everyone's unique, especially gender roles. You cannot expect the same thing of a man for a woman, and vice versa. If you want your relationships, if you want your friendships, if you want any kind of bond with anyone else on the opposite end of the spectrum, of the gender spectrum, you have to put how they work into consideration. And a lot of men struggle with that. A lot of men struggle with being open to appreciating both sides, to appreciating differences. A lot of men just want it their way because that's how they were raised. That's how they were taught. And that's how a lot of men's minds work. If it doesn't logically make sense, then it's null and void. They're right and you're wrong. But once men understand and crack the code that you're you and she's her, but once you find a common bond, a common bridge, then that will bring success. Otherwise, you will do nothing but argue and debate on how different you two are. And it will never work. And that will lead to a whole bunch of other things. It just won't be positive though, right? A lot of men struggle with that in relationships. The next thing I want to bring up, the fourth thing that men struggle with in relationships, is the fear of repetition. A lot of men fear being in relationships because they feel like they're going to get bored. I heard a speaker speak on this, but he was saying how, the male was created to produce. They were created to go out. They were created to go hunt. And that has some validity to it. So a lot of men have that urge. They have that sense of, hey, I need to produce. I need to do. All right, I need to go out. So when some men get locked down in relationships, they feel like their natural selves are being cut off. They feel like what they're supposed to be is being halted by this relationship. So these type of men that fear repetition, that fear the possibility of boredom, they struggle with relationships because they feel like relationships are locking them down. And so to these men, I've come across a lot of these men actually. I know them, and I asked them, so what do you look for in a relationship? Because if you're not going into a relationship thinking long term, or even like, going forever with these things, then what are you looking for? Because you used your sense of going out and hunting and producing when you got her. So now that you have your lady, what now? Are you going to end everything because your hunt is over? See, this is a thing that a lot of men have to be honest with, have to be open about, have to talk to other men about. Because if they have no one to talk to men about that been in this situation, then they don't know what to do. And a lot of women don't even know this, but a lot of men struggle with this. They fear of the possibility of being bored and losing their it. All right, so the last thing, the fifth thing that I want to bring up that a lot of men struggle with in relationships is the too good to be true syndrome. Let's be honest, ladies. How many times have you heard a woman say, "Oh girl, I think he's too good for me"? Well, guess what? Men say that way more than you know. You would be surprised how many men, and maybe your man, told their friends like, "Yo, I think she's way too good for me. She is way out of my league." You would be surprised. And it is because God made y'all the most beautiful creatures in the universe. Can I get an amen? And us men, we've accepted that. It's cool. That's great. We know that. And we understand we weren't created in that vision, overall, because God had other plans for us. We're specialized in other things. But for women, y'all are the epitome of beauty. When you think of beauty, first thing you think of is women. So we understand that. So when certain men that struggle with this point get a woman who just seems out of their league, who is just beautiful, but somehow likes them, not to say they're ugly, but this is how a lot of these men who struggle with this think. Like, yo, what does she want with me? Do you see her? She is gorgeous. She is everything a man wants. Like, she's beautiful. She's smart. She's all this, all that. Why does she want me? Men who struggle with this point, they think of this constantly. But men who struggle with this point and are immature, or they lack self-esteem, or they have self-security issues, then they're thinking that this woman just want to use them for something, because they cannot believe that this woman wants them. Too good to be true syndrome. And a lot of men struggle with this more than you know. So instead of these guys just accepting the fact that this woman loves them for who they are, and it's not because of their looks or what they can do for them, they love them for who they are, they struggle with the fact that there is no way this beautiful creature, this God created being likes me. And I've even heard men tell me this, and they'll say like, "Yo, I honestly felt like she was too good for me." And then I asked them, "So like, did you ever tell her that?" And they said, "Yeah." A lot of them say, "Yeah." But their woman will always say, "Yo, it's not about that. It's not about looks. I love you for you." And they still won't believe her because they struggle with this too good to be true syndrome. They won't let it go. This woman loves them for who they are, and they struggle with it because they can't believe it. But these are 5 things that I want to point out to y'all ladies that your man may struggle with. One of these things, maybe he doesn't. But a lot of men struggle with these things, and it is a fact because I talked to a lot of men about these things, and it was a repetitive theme. These 5 things were the most repeated things I heard. And like I told you, one of them I struggled with myself. So I know this for sure. All right. So keep that in consideration when it comes to your guy. And that is why communication is so very important. All right. So thank you for coming back to my video. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I hope y'all learned a little something. And I will see y'all on my next flick. Peace and blessings. Have a good day. Bye.